Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show built for you, the perpetually curious learner, where we take your stack of sources, research notes, and articles and provide the ultimate shortcut to being truly well-informed.
Today, we are turning our attention to the southern hemisphere, specifically to a peak that reigns supreme over two continents and carries a nickname as brutal as its environment.
We're doing a deep dive into the physical, geological, historical, and, well, surprisingly dangerous reality of Mount Aconcagua.
That's right.
Our mission is to unpack the stories and statistics of the Colossus of the Americas, the highest point in the entire Western Hemisphere.
And when you start listing the facts about this mountain, you really get a sense of why it commands such global attention. It's a truly massive presence.
It is. We're looking at an official height of 6,967.1 feet meters.
Or 22,858.1 feet above sea level. And that elevation puts Aconcagua into some very exclusive clubs, globally speaking.
It's the undisputed king of the continent, sure, but let's zoom out a bit.
Right. Think globally. It is the highest point outside of Asia.
Which is a huge deal. That's also the highest peak in the southern hemisphere.
Meaning, if you drew a line around the equator, nothing is higher. And of course, it's a foundational member of the famous Seven Summits Club.
But there's another detail, beyond just sheer height, that really speaks to its dominance.
You're talking about the topographical prominence.
Exactly. It's the second most topographically prominent peak on Earth. Now let's unpack that for a second, because that term doesn't just mean height, does it?
No, not at all. It's about something much more fundamental. Prominence measures the vertical distance from a peak down to the lowest point you'd have to go to climb a higher peak.
So it's a measure of its isolation,
Right.
of how much it stands alone.
Precisely. And only Mount Everest has greater topographical prominence. So what that means, in practical terms, is that Aconcagua rises nearly 7,000 vertical meters from its base. It's just an unbroken, colossal presence.
It sounds less like a mountain and more like a geographic statement. So where exactly does this giant stand sentinel?
It's right in the heart of the Andes, in the Principal Cordillera, specifically in the Mendoza province of Argentina.
About 112 kilometers northwest of the city of Mendoza.
That's the one. And while it's firmly in Argentina, it's remarkably close to its neighbor.
Just 15 kilometers from the Chilean border.
Yeah, very close, emphasizing its central position. And the whole thing is protected within the Aconcagua Provincial Park.
Which seems to be defined by these really dramatic natural boundaries.
It is. Aconcagua is basically walled in by these deep, sweeping valleys. To the north and east, you have the Valle de las Vacas.
The Valley of the Cows.
Right. And to the west and south, the Valle de los Horcones Inferior. These valleys really highlight its massive scale, and the mountain itself is the source of several huge glaciers, like the Ventisquero Horcones Inferior.
A mountain of this scale, it has to have a name that carries similar weight. And the name Aconcagua itself is a bit of a mystery, right?
It's a fascinating linguistic puzzle. You've got at least 3 different indigenous theories for where the name comes from.
Okay, let's start with the most sort of geographically direct one.
That would be the Mapudungun origin, Aconcagua. It's often translated as comes from the other side, which is thought to refer to the Aconcagua River. It's a very practical, directional name.
Right, but the others, the ones from Quechua and Aymara, they feel much more evocative. They lean into the mountain's visual presence.
Absolutely. The Quechua options are especially powerful. You have Aconcagua, which means sentinel of stone.
Which is perfect. It just captures that image of a silent guardian.
It does. Or, alternatively, Aconcagua, white sentinel, which of course references its permanent snow and ice.
And the Aymara option is a little different, focus more on the valleys.
Yeah, that one is Joncucawa, which translates to white ravine. So while the Quechua names focus on the summit, the Aymara name seems to focus on the snow-filled gullies that slice through it.
So whether it's the Sentinel of Stone, the White Sentinel, the White Ravine, the theme is always this massive, dominant white presence.
Exactly. Reverence for its sheer size.
Okay, from its name, let's shift to its origins. The tectonic violence that actually created this Sentinel of Stone, its geological story isn't a simple eruption, is it?
No, it's a story of compression and violent uplift. But to understand it, you have to recognize its former life. Aconcagua was, in fact, a massive active stratovolcano.
So it was born from the subduction zone, where the Nazca Plate dives under the South American Plate.
Exactly. the driver for the whole Pacific Ring of Fire. For millions of years, from the late Cretaceous all the way through the Miocene, it was just spewing lavas and ash. It was part of a huge volcanic arc.
But then something changed, and here's where it gets really interesting. Something mechanical happened that stopped the fire and started this colossal squeeze instead.
This is the crucial transition. It happened about 8 to 10 million years ago. The Nazca Plate, instead of diving down at a steep angle, began sliding almost horizontally beneath the continent.
A shallow subduction.
A shallow subduction, and that had two massive consequences.
Okay, what were they?
Well, first, by flattening the angle, you lose the depth needed for the rock to melt and create magma. So, the volcanic engine of Aconcagua just shut off.
It went dormant.
It died. And second, that shallow angle dramatically increased the horizontal compressive stresses between the two plates.
So instead of magma pushing up from below, the mountain was being squeezed from the sides, like a vice.
Precisely. This tremendous horizontal crunching created what we call thrust faults. And these faults physically ripped Aconcagua off its volcanic route and shoved it skyward. It became a peak defined by continental collision.
Which means the mountain structure is like an open book for geologists.
Yeah.
If we were standing there today, how do the rocks tell that chaotic story?
Well, if you look high up on the flanks, near the summit, you're seeing the relics of its volcano life. Hard, dark lavas, volcanic breccias, pyroclastics.
Fire-formed rocks.
Exactly. But then you step down into the valleys, and the colors change completely. You see those stunning greens, blues, and grays.
And those tell the earlier story, the marine story.
Right. Those are carbonates, limestones, turbidites, sediments that settled in a shallow Triassic sea hundreds of millions of years ago. The uplift was so powerful, it just ripped them up and exposed them.
And what about the red rocks you see?
That's usually the final stage of its volcanic life. Things like cinder deposits, conglomerates, and other intrusions that cooled right before the big squeeze started. So in one place, you have a whole geological archive, ancient sea, dead volcano, and the fractured evidence of a continental collision.
That story of monumental force brings us to the modern paradox of Aconcagua. We know it's gigantic, yet it holds this very unique status in the mountaineering world.
And that status is the core of the paradox. The claim is that Aconcagua is arguably the highest non-technical mountain in the world.
And that applies specifically to the normal route.
To the normal route, the northwest approach. And non-technical means that under normal conditions, you don't absolutely need ropes, ice axes, or climbing pins.
It's essentially a very, very strenuous high-altitude hike.
That's a good way to put it. And that accessibility is what draws thousands of climbers. It's seen as the entry point to extreme altitude climbing.
But I have to wonder if calling it non-technical is, inherently misleading. Because the true enemy here isn't the rock face.
Not at all.
It's the air and the climate.
It absolutely is. The technical ease allows climbers to focus on the altitude, which is universally unforgiving. At the summit, atmospheric pressure is a mere 40% of what we experience at sea level.
Wow. Less than half the oxygen.
Less than half. And your body feels that profound physiological stress. Altitude sickness, or AMS, will affect almost everyone to some degree.
We're talking severe headaches, nausea, fatigue.
Exactly. But the real danger is when that progresses to ACE, or HAPE, high-altitude cerebral or pulmonary edema.
And those are genuine medical emergencies.
Life-threatening. HAPE is fluid in the lungs. HAC is swelling in the brain. The only effective treatment is immediate, rapid descent.
And unlike the 8,000-meter peaks, supplemental oxygen isn't common practice here.
No, it's not standard. You're expected to rely solely on acclimatization.
Which brings us to the big question. If the easiest route is technically manageable, why does this mountain have such a dark reputation? Why is it nicknamed the Mountain of Death?
That nickname, unfortunately, is earned through hard statistics. Aconcagua has the highest death rate of any mountain in South America.
Over 100 people have died since records began.
Yes, and the annual average is still around 3 deaths per climbing season. It's stubbornly high.
So where do the casualties come from, if not from technical climbing falls?
It's a convergence of factors. The high accessibility leads to complacency, it draws huge numbers of climbers, and a higher percentage of those are maybe underprepared or cut corners on acclimatization. They underestimate the real risks.
The risks being the brutal, sudden weather changes and the extreme cold.
Precisely. Aconcagua is notorious for violent storms and incredible winds. You're talking severe frostbite and hypothermia, which can incapacitate a climber very, very quickly.
Like in January 2009.
A stark example. It was supposed to be high summer, and 5 climbers died in a single spell of bad weather from exposure and altitude issues.
So its deadliness is institutional, not technical. The mountain kills through attrition and thin air.
Exactly. The cold and altitude create a vicious cycle. The sheer volume of traffic just exposes more people to the mountain's intrinsic dangers.
Let's talk about that traffic. What proportion of climbers actually succeed?
The success rate is quite sobering. Only an estimated 30 to 40% of climbers who start the ascent actually reach the summit.
And most of them are sticking to two main routes.
Correct. The normal route is overwhelmingly popular, about 54% of all climbers.
And then there's the Polish Glacier Traverse.
Right, the Fossa de los Polacos. That attracts about 43%. It starts by traversing the Vacas Valley, but instead of taking the full, difficult ice climb of the Polish glacier itself,
It cuts across.
it traverses across the mountain's upper flanks and joins the easier normal route for the final push. It's a bit more dramatic without requiring full-on ice climbing skills.
So between those two, that's 97% of all activity. What about the other 3%?
That's reserved for the expert mountaineers, the south and southwest ridges, and of course the famed South Face.
Which is a whole different ballgame.
A totally different mountain. Highly technical, vertical ice and rock, universally rated as quite difficult.
Okay, so let's map out the journey for the majority of climbers on that normal route. It's a huge logistical exercise.
It starts at the little village of Puente del Inca at about 2,740 meters. This is where you finalize logistics, check gear, organize mule trains.
And from there, you head into the park. But the real nerve center, the hub of the entire season, is Plaza de Mulas.
Plaza de Mulas at 4,370 meters is a massive undertaking. Our sources claim it's the second largest base camp in the world, right after Everest.
The world's second largest base camp. What does that even look like?
It's like a small temporary city. Huge dining tents, rudimentary showers, and, amazingly, satellite internet access.
But it's more than just a place to eat and sleep. It plays a critical, life-saving role.
A vital role. Before any climber can go higher, they have to undergo a mandatory medical screening right there at Plaza de Mulas.
So the park doctors check your vitals, oxygen saturation, look for signs of AMS.
And if they determine you're not properly acclimatized, your journey ends right there.
The mountain requires a doctor's note to continue.
It shows how seriously they take the Mountain of Death nickname.
Once you get the green light, you head up to the high cams for the summit bit.
Right. The first big jump is usually to Nido de Condores, the condor's nest, at 5,570 meters. It's a big, sprawling plateau.
And from there, it's onto the final launch pads.
Correct. The classic high camp is Camp Berlin at 5,940 meters. It's popular because it offers some natural wind protection.
But recently, another camp has become more popular.
Yes. The slightly higher Camp Cholera, right at 6,000 meters, it just gives you a marginally better starting point for that grueling summit day.
And Camp Cholera is notable for a very poignant story.
It is. In 2011, an emergency shelter named Elena was built there. It was donated by the family of an Italian climber, Elena Senin, who tragically died in 2009, shortly after reaching the summit.
A permanent memorial and a vital refuge.
A grim reminder of the price the mountain exacts.
These human stories really define Aconcagua. Let's trace back the history of European mountaineering here, starting with the first major attempt.
That would be the 1883 expedition, led by the German geologist Paul Gusfeld. He was driven by scientific curiosity, but his method for motivating his porters was creative.
He told them there was Incan treasure hidden near the summit.
He did. Forget the altitude, boys. There's gold up there.
And this treasure hunt inadvertently paved the way for modern climbing.
It absolutely did. He reached 6,500 meters, and in doing so, he mapped out what became the normal route we use today. But he didn't summit.
The first recorded ascent came later, 1897.
With the big British expedition organized by Edward Fitzgerald. And what's fascinating here, the real irony,
Is Fitzgerald himself, the guy who organized the whole thing.
he never stood on the summit of Aconcagua.
Never. How many times did he try?
A staggering 8 times. And every single time, he was forced to turn back. Altitude sickness, exhaustion.
It was his Swiss guide, Matthias Zurbriggen, who made the first recorded ascent.
On January 14, 1897, Fitzgerald's repeated failure, even with all the resources, just underscores the brutal nature of Aconcagua's altitude.
And the mountain has been a stage for pushing human limits ever since, especially with age and speed.
The age records are just staggering. They span almost 80 years of human life. The youngest was Tyler Armstrong, who summited at 9 years old.
9, and the oldest.
Scott Lewis, who made it in 2007 at the age of 87.
That is an astonishing biological range. For a mountain known for killing people in their prime, that's just extraordinary.
It is, but the speed records are maybe even harder to comprehend.
You're talking about maximum aerobic output in that 40% oxygen environment.
Exactly. The current men's record is held by Karl Egloff, an Ecuadorian-Swiss runner, 11 hours and 52 minutes.
For the round trip, up and down.
Up and down. And what's wild is that he broke the record held by the legend Kilian Jornet less than 2 months after Jornet set it.
It was a high-altitude duel. That's incredible. Climbing and descending nearly 7,000 vertical meters in under 12 hours.
They're operating on a completely different physiological plane. The women's record is held by Daniela Sandoval at 20 hours and 17 minutes.
And we have to talk about the 2019 ascent of the Cholita climbers.
Yes. The Cholitas are a group of indigenous Aymara women who took on Aconcagua as a statement of endurance and cultural pride.
And they summited in their full traditional dress. The layered skirts, the shawls.
It was a powerful, beautiful display. Their story was even documented in the film Cholitas.
Aconcagua is also staged for some unusual modern details.
Two things really stand out. First, the highest contemporary art gallery in the world is right there at base camp.
In Plaza de Mulas, a gallery in a tent called Nautilus.
Run by an Argentine painter, Miguel Dura. So you can check your pulse for altitude sickness and then go look at a landscape painting.
It's an absurd juxtaposition of culture and survival.
Absolutely. And the second detail is a stunning bit of technology. In 2019, an Airbus H-145 helicopter landed directly on the summit.
The first time a twin-engine helicopter had ever landed at that altitude.
A huge feat. And the whole trip from the city of Mendoza took only 45 minutes.
45 minutes, compared to the 12-hour speed record.
It just highlights this incredible chasm between the human effort and the almost casual way modern machinery can conquer the same environment.
And that helicopter landing is a good pivot to the massive modern danger facing Aconcagua that technology has not solved.
The environmental cost of its popularity. This is the most serious crisis facing the park today.
Specifically, the improper disposal of human waste.
It's a catastrophic problem. The extreme altitude means waste degrades incredibly slowly, if at all. It concentrates pathogens and contaminates the snow and ice, which are the headwaters for the entire region.
So the water on the mountain is only safe if it's been chemically treated or boiled.
That's what our sources stress. And the reason disposal is so challenging comes down to logistics and economics.
Right. There are eco-friendly toilets, but they're mostly for organized expeditions.
And if you're an independent climber, you have to contract that service yourself. And that becomes a huge economic barrier.
The costs can be significant, up to $100 for some.
Or $5 a day for others. But for an independent mountaineer trying to save every dollar, that fee leads many to make a dangerous choice.
They just defecate on the mountainside.
Which has created a cleanup effort of shocking proportions.
It's a massive public works project.
It is. The Park Service has to fly out over 120 barrels of compacted human waste every single season.
Which equates to, what was the figure?
Approximately 22,500 kilograms, or nearly 50,000 pounds of human waste removed by helicopter every year.
50,000 pounds. That single statistic says everything about the cost of its accessibility.
It really does. The modern challenge of Aconcagua isn't the climb itself, it's managing the sheer volume of human ambition it attracts.
And that struggle stands in such brutal contrast to the mountain's sacred past. For the Incas, this wasn't a challenge to conquer.
No, it was a huaca, a sacred place, a living deity. And it was a location for religious worship and for ritualized human sacrifices, the capacocha.
These were the highest and most sacred rituals the Inca Empire performed.
Usually involving the sacrifice of children, seen as pure offerings to the mountain gods. They believed the closer the offering was to the sun god, Inti, the more powerful the sacrifice.
And the most incredible evidence of this was discovered high on Aconcagua itself.
In 1985, an archaeological team made a discovery at a staggering 5,167 meters. It's one of the highest altitude archaeological sites ever found.
And one of the most difficult to reach. Tell us about the Aconcagua mummy.
The remains were of a 7-year-old child. The body wasn't mummified in the Egyptian sense, but frozen. And the child had been carefully placed inside a small stone structure, lined with soft grass, fine cloth, and feathers.
And the clothing told a story.
It did. The elaborate attire indicated the child was from the highest social class, specifically chosen for this sacred pilgrimage. And alongside the remains were other offerings, small figures, coca leaves.
It speaks to a monumental, organized effort to conduct a ritual at an altitude that still defeats most modern climbers.
Absolutely. The effort involved is just mind-boggling. And it wasn't just humans. There's also the skeleton of a guanaco
A wild relative of the llama.
found high on the ridge connecting the north and south summits. It's almost certain it was transported there by the Incas as an offering. It just further illustrates their profound skill and dedication.
So what does this all mean? We've traced Aconcagua from its violent birth to its modern role as a global challenge and an environmental dilemma.
I think it means we're looking at a mountain of profound contradictions. It's geologically violent, but technically accessible.
Culturally sacred, yet environmentally besieged by the waste of mass tourism.
It's the highest point of ambition for thousands, and the burial ground for too many who underestimated its non-technical dangers.
It is the highest mountain outside Asia, the second most prominent peak globally, yet its modern legacy is defined as much by the 50,000 pounds of waste as it is by the records broken on its slopes. The Sentinel of Stone is watching over its own crisis.
A truly complex portrait of a giant.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought, tying together that ancient reverence and the modern ambition.
The Incas, who called Aconcagua the Sentinel of Stone, scaled it without any of our modern gear. And when you think about the discovery of that Aconcagua mummy at over 5,100 meters, or the effort to haul offerings like a guanaco to the summit ridge, you have to ask, what incredible level of skill, endurance, and deep religious motivation must those Inca climbers have possessed to operate at heights that still defeat so many of us today? And maybe you should think about your own motivation for learning about a place like this. Is it just a modern pursuit of record-breaking and challenge? Or is there some thread, however subtle, that connects us all back to that ancient, enduring, sacred pilgrimage?